Hello and well, it is just about 2 minutes before the top of the hour, and we will be getting started right at 4 o'clock. So if you're here, you're in the right place. You should see, well, one, you should be able to hear me, and two, you should be able to see my screen as well that says Convert and Close Your Clients Tips for Landing the Gig. So if you don't see anything on your screen, then pop a note in the chat box. It should be to the right, and let me know if you are not able to see that first slide of my PowerPoint screen. It looks good on my end. All right, looks like it's working. We're gonna keep our fingers crossed that it's gonna work this whole time. Yay, everybody's starting to show up. Very exciting. Welcome to Convert and Close Your Clients, Tips for Landing the Gig. I don't care if you're a new freelancer or if you've been at this for a while, this training is going to be very helpful because I'm going to dive into all of the psychological and business tactics I've learned and experimented with and proven over years of being in business and marketing many different types of freelance projects to people. One of the reasons that conversion is so critical is because if you're having a ton of conversations, but they're not going anywhere, it feels like it's a huge waste of your time. And that's one of the biggest reasons why people end up getting frustrated and they think that they are not going to be successful landing freelance clients. So, or building a freelance business. I'm going to just make sure that this first screen does pop up, and it sure looks like it did. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and dive in. Welcome to the webinar, whether you're watching live or you're watching the replay. This is Your Clients, number 3 in the Summer of Strategy 10-week series. If you are a member of the Make Money on Upwork group, remember you can hop in there right after this training, and the post is already scheduled to go live, where you can share your number 1 takeaway from this training. Whoever gets chosen by the lovely random number generator is going to win access to my Upwork pitching masterclass. In the event that person already has it through some previous purchase, they're going to get access to my retain. So good stuff on the line this week. Make sure you participate. Really easy. You just need to drop in there and leave 1 comment. So let's jump into all of the content here and begin to talk about why conversions are so important. And it's like not like the sexiest, topic, right? Like on its face value, you're like, okay, converting clients. Like, yes, I know that's important, but I'd rather focus on things like getting paid. But what's really important about conversion is if you have materials in the world, you have an awesome pitch, and you have the potential to work with awesome clients, and yet you're not converting those clients that you're piquing the interest of, it's a lot of time spent that goes down the drain. So a real focus on conversion and strategy is about efficiency. So earning more and doing less, spending less of that time, not spending 10 hours on a pitch and a proposal and conversations with clients, all for it to go down the drain or go nowhere. Now you can't someone chooses to do business now or to wait or to not do business at all. But there are some tips and strategies you're going to learn in this particular training about how to be more effective with the energy that you do put out there and how to increase your chances of getting that client to make the psychological decision to hire you when you're obviously the right fit. Another thing that's unique about conversion is that it's about achieving that optimal project and client load with an amount of pitching and sales time that makes sense. You may have heard me say before, people who are fully booked, so freelancers who have a full slate of clients, should still be marketing and pitching. But it's even more important then that they use their time wisely, because they may only have 5 or 10 hours a week to dedicate to marketing or growing their business because they're busy with client projects. So it can be a real mistake. And I'm just going to check really quick to make sure. Awesome. Okay, good. I haven't seen any comments that no one can see the screen, so I'm going to proceed on. So time that you do put into writing pitches, having conversations, doing proposals for clients, negotiating rates and project size is well worth it. If you spend 5 hours working on a proposal and pitching and putting together amazing samples for a client and doing a phone call with them. And then it ends in the best possible scenario, which is a retainer. So more than 1 month's worth of work for that particular client. It's a great investment of your time. But we have to be mindful of the time we spend. No clients yet. You don't want to spend way too long coming up with pitches and proposals for one client that goes nowhere. You have to have a multifaceted marketing approach. And this is often hard for people to know unless they're tracking who wants to do. But think about how much of your pitching process, how much time you're spending on the pitching process every single week or month. And then what percentage of that is translating to a client. Now, it's not just about, because maybe you put in a lot of time with one particular client, but it ended up being an amazing one, right? It was a $10,000 job or a $5,000 job. So it was worth all of that legwork. But it can also take a long time to convert a client. So you can't always dedicate every waking hour or marketing hour you have just to pitching prospective clients, particularly if the pitch goes out and the proposal goes out and everything seems good, but you're not able to close the deal. So I want to present concept that I am quite familiar with, having worked in law offices for the vast majority of my life and working with lawyers still today. And that's billable versus non-billable hours. You're always going to have some non-billable hours in your business. A lot of times people make the transition into the freelance world. Maybe they're doing it part-time. So they say, all right, I've got 10 hours per week. Or if they're doing it full-time, they'll say, well, I've got 40 hours per week. Not all of those 10 part-time hours or 40 full-time hours are going to be billable hours. You are working on paid projects from clients, you're always going to have some non-billable time, administrative stuff, answering little emails that you're not billing the client for, doing the legwork to put together the proposal, paying someone to edit your work or to look it over or to have a second opinion. But we want to make sure that those non-billable hours, so the hours we are not being paid by a client, are used as effectively as possible, because so we want to make sure that they're working towards getting you paid in the future. So let's imagine that you typically charge $50 an hour, and you spend a total of 5 hours researching a company, sending in a pitch, creating custom samples if you do that, and then you schedule a phone call and you have a phone call with the client and it goes nowhere. That process essentially cost you $250 because you could have been working on a billable hour project at $50 or whatever your hourly rate is. So for this particular gig, if we put a lot of effort into it and we lost the job, or it just didn't go through for some reason, that's essentially $250 that you can't get back. Now, that's not a loss. That's not a complete loss, because I'm sure you learned something in the process. There's no finite way to tell whether or not a client is ready to move forward or not. But we want to have as few of these experiences as possible. If you're doing this time and time again every single week, or you're spending 3 hours a day on those people are becoming your clients, it's a really poor use of your time. And it's also a very negative self-fulfilling prophecy, because you start thinking, well, I can't land gigs, and then you don't land gigs. So you think that even more, and you kind of beat yourself up and get in this negative headspace. So there are 2 ways that you can improve this situation to cut down on the amount of non-billable time you're spending with prospective clients. The first is to reduce the time that is spent per pitch. So you can get faster. You can use a pitch design or customization. Some people I know who are really successful with cold emailing as their pitching method, or LinkedIn, will hire a digital team member to do the research of the pitch, or to actually send the pitch once it's been created and set up those phone calls. The other thing that you can do, which of course we all want, is to land more of those gigs. Now, this is easier than you think. A lot of you are probably psyching yourselves out thinking, well, I just can't land it. I'd love to land work. I have great samples to show how awesome I am, and I'm just not landing the gigs. There's some psychological work that needs to be done as you're having conversations with the client, so that you can tease out exactly what it is they are looking for. And then there's some other strategies that you can implement to increase the chances that if they're kind of a ready and mostly willing buyer when you talk to them, that they're all the way over on the side of being ready to sign a contract after they talk to you. And your conversion rate definitely matters. Anybody who has a 100% conversion rate. Even if I were to hop on Upwork today and bid on 5 jobs, I may never hear from 4 of them. Maybe I'll hear from 1 of them today or a week from now or a month from now. There are so many different reasons that clients choose not to work with you. You don't want to take any one of those personally, but if you're casting a really wide net and you're marketing kind of everywhere, but you're not getting any responses, then something is wrong. So let's talk about the end-to-end process of converting. First thing is you have to know who you want to work with. If you advertise to crappy clients and have conversations with crappy clients, one of 2 bad things could happen. One, you don't land the gig, which is kind of like, looking a gift horse in the mouth. You should, in hindsight, you might say, well, thank goodness I didn't work with that client. They seem like a nightmare. But that contributes to your feeling that you're not doing well at converting clients. Or worse, you end up working for the client and then convince yourself that freelancing is a nightmare because you're stuck with a disaster client. Being selective is extremely important, and I will say is one of the top couple of secrets of every 6-figure freelancer I know. They are very, very successful because they are selective about who they work with. That sometimes means leaving money on the table and firing clients. The more you can learn this lesson now, the easier it is. It's never going to be 100% seamless and perfect, and you can identify every prospective client who you do and don't want to work with, but you can definitely start to practice those skills now so that walking away from a bad deal in the future. Seeking and connecting with your ideal clients only is also really important because we want to share the message to our prospective clients that we only work with a particular set or group of people. And I often remind people who are new to freelancing that you get to decide who you work with and the types of projects that you take on. We often enter with an employee mentality and we have to work with everyone. The customer is always right. A paying gig from anyone is better than no paying gigs from any person, right? That's wrong. If you're a freelancer, you get to decide who you work with. And the more that you choose who to work with and how to work with them successfully, you build this amazing cycle that's kind of the opposite of you not landing clients. You do great work with clients who love your work and they refer you, they give you testimonials, they hire you again and again. So your conversions with those sweet spot clients, those ideal clients, makes your life so much easier. The process that I recommend for every freelancer is to make the pitch, to get them to a phone call, and the phone call leads to a proposal. The pitch sometimes can lead directly to you being hired on sites like Upwork. They might just, select your bid and you can move forward. With other clients, however, you always want to have a phone call. Phone calls with my Upwork clients because I want them to hear my voice, to know I'm human, to be able to ask me questions. It also instills a greater level of credibility and trust because they know I'm a real person. And a lot of times it's very difficult to get a read on someone with their written words only. So having that conversation is the chance to form a relationship. Now, if you're not on Upwork and you're talking to a client on LinkedIn or from somewhere else, writing a proposal should follow doing a. As an example, yesterday I had a call with a prospective LinkedIn client. He contacted me on LinkedIn. If you haven't watched the previous training about LinkedIn strategies, you really should, because I had 3 phone calls this week with prospective clients who found me on LinkedIn. He contacted me, so that's essentially the pitch stage. We had a phone call. That was my chance to learn everything I can about this guy. A lot of freelancers think, well, I'm being interviewed on the phone call. I just need to come across professional. No, you have to be investigative journalist on this phone call. You're digging, you're finding out everything you can because you want to write a winning proposal, a proposal that they're ready to sign and pay. In order to know whether you're being successful, you've got to measure your metrics. How many of your pitches are landing right now? Is it less than 1 out of 10? We got to do something to tweak that process. Now, not every pitch is ever going to land. You're rarely going to have, no one has a 100% success rate. Know where you want to go if you haven't started to measure where you're already at. An Excel spreadsheet is a great way to keep track of your pitching. You can keep track of details like who the client is, any information about the prospect, like their website or places they've been mentioned in the news. List when you pitched them, the date you had a phone call with them, key takeaways or notes from the call, and then your date to follow up. If you're sending a massive amount of pitches, I do recommend having some type of way to keep track of trail, because it's also really helpful if someone reaches out to you after it's been 3 weeks and you're like, wait, who's this guy? I've talked to so many people I don't remember. I like to use color coding inside a Google spreadsheet to indicate, yellow, this is still a warm lead. They haven't signed anything, but I think I might be able to nudge them in that direction. Green for they ultimately decided to work with me. And then red, like they straight up said no. Now, unless someone says, no, I hate you, never contact me again, that's the only situation in which you would say, all right, literally, I'm never going to contact you again. I'm not going to spam you. I don't want to bother you. But even clients who say no now may have an opportunity to work with you in the future. So we might list them as red, like they said no, but that doesn't mean you can't follow up and circle back in a couple months to see if their needs have changed. Once you've begun to measure how you're doing with your pitching and your proposals, you want to do some reflection time. So how can you make your process even more? One thing I love is having template pitches. So I have pitches for every different type of service that I offer, and they all touch on the same general points about my personality and my work, but they're different because the work I'm pitching is different. So I have a pitch as a project manager. I have a pitch as a freelance writer. I used to have a pitch as a virtual assistant. And when I'm going in and sending a lot of pitches, it really helps to have these template materials that I'm just adding a little bit of customization to each one. And you can keep documents you can easily copy and paste. Like if you're doing a bunch of Upwork pitching, you might have that Google Doc or that Word document open and you're copying and pasting it into the Upwork mainframe and then making tweaks as you need to. So template emails, a system for the way you book calls. You can use a free tool like Calendly that will allow you on their free account. They'll allow you to have one meeting type per month. So you could set up, free 20-minute consultation calls with prospective clients built in as a link that you send them like, hey, book a time to talk with me. So there's a lot of ways that you can improve your process and make it as efficient as possible. So what are the most effective strategies for converting your clients? The first is mapping the pitch. We're taking people on a psychological journey when they read your pitch. We're taking them through the envisioning of what it would be like to work with you. So if you have standard offers, like you offer packages, couple of different services, or you really like to be in this one sweet spot where you're selling a particular thing, this is a perfect opportunity to write a template pitch. Then you might want to map out the key things that you feel you have to touch upon. Let's imagine, for example, that you are a Pinterest strategist. What you do is you get people followers on Pinterest, you get repins on Pinterest, and you manage group boards for them. So you want to talk about why each of those individual services client. Don't just talk about the fact that you can do it and do it well, but talk about why the client should care about those particular things that you do. This is a big mistake a lot of people make in pitching. Talk way too much about themselves. And then have a planned agenda with every single pitch that you promote. Because there are certain points that you want to get across in every single pitch without overwhelming the client. That's your unique value proposition. What is it that you can do that no one do? And you also increase your chances of a conversion in addition to maintaining control. If you've ever been pitching on sites like Upwork, or you had a phone call with someone and you need to do a proposal sooner rather than later, or come up with an official write-up of what you intend to do, it's much easier if you already have these materials created. It doesn't feel like a massive process to start all over again. One of the most things you can do, probably honestly the most important thing you can do to convert clients more effectively, is to understand their pain points and to speak directly to their pain points. Clients will tell you what their issues are, either in an Upwork job post, a phone call, or an email. So even if you've already pitched the client and you're now in the phone call phase, but they haven't yet agreed to work with you, dig in, figure out why they haven't done this project up to now. Somebody else, why did it fall flat? So analyze the words they used in their job post or conversation with you. I have many great examples of this where a client very quickly and clearly told me what was wrong and why they needed somebody. They might say, I am totally overwhelmed. Okay, so when I hear that, I immediately go to, in my pitch, I'm going to talk about how easy it is going to be for them to have me do this. And it comes off really never have to think about it again unless they want to. If a client says, we've hired other freelancers before and it's been a disaster, you can include in your pitch or in your proposal or your response on the phone call, yes, I know, unfortunately, there's a lot of freelancers out there that drag down this great industry that we're in, but you know you can count on me. Check out my testimonials on my LinkedIn profile. I am a high quality professional freelancer. You won't have to worry about that with any of that with me. So you can understand their pain points and then directly respond to it. And when you meet people where they are at with their concerns or their fears or their worst case scenario, and you can quell that in a conversation or in a pitch, you can be extremely successful at converting them because they don't feel like it is a template pitch. Even if you may have used a template pitch and added 2 sentences addressing their pain point, they feel like you're talking directly to them. And so the conversation has already started. They've already begun to imagine working with you. Another thing you can do is before you have a phone call with them, put out a pre-call survey. Ask them what it is they're thinking about. Do a quick survey. You don't need to have 15, 25 questions here, but ask them, what are the biggest things you're concerned about? In your mind, how would you measure the effectiveness of this project? Get a sense of where they're at. People will often give you quite a bit of information to do it. They will tell you, like what their potential objections are. And if you capture this in a pre-call survey, you can practice your response and be 10 times more effective on the phone call because you already know what their hesitations are. And of course, ask the client their pain points. Ask them why they haven't hired somebody else until now. Ask them what they're afraid of. Ask them if they've had bad experiences in the past. Ask them why they're not doing. Okay, they'll tell you, and this will give you a better ability to swoop in and say, oh, I completely understand what you're saying. Let me address that concern by telling you what I do that makes me different or what I do that helps me solve this problem for you. And another great tip to convert these pain points into solutions on your behalf is to rephrase their own words. So if a client says, I am super stressed out, I'm working 60 hours, I really need someone to come in and write new homepage copy for my website. You might respond by saying, oh, well, once you get me the instructions and guidelines, I'm good to go. You don't even need to check in on me until the work's turned in. You don't even have to think about it. I take care of the complete process and make sure it's written as well as possible. So that's a great way to turn it around directly on them. You've heard their pain point, you digested it, and you talked about exactly how you solve that. So if they don't give you enough information, prompt them to elaborate. Be in that initial phone call and use it as your chance to interview them as well. So if you're not getting enough details, keep digging. And you can even use, someone who's difficult to talk to, you can ease them in by asking yes or no questions. You can reiterate back to them what they just said and share, what I'm hearing from you is, it sounds like what you might need is this, and they'll kind of echo that back to you. And most times people will give you further details at that point in time. So here's where we begin to connect the dots. Align your solution directly to the priority or pain point. If they're mad because people they've hired in the past didn't meet deadlines, if they don't really understand why they need to pay somebody to do this particular service, give a little example of a past client you helped and the type of results that you got. Don't even need to name names. That little social proof testimonial, and then they can see the benefits of hiring someone who's a professional. And always draw that line directly between what they're saying their problems are. And the problem can even be, I'm not even sure why we need a blog. I'm not even sure why we should hire a voiceover artist. And then you can directly align your solutions and the services that you offer to that particular pain point. And being able to navigate these conversations, whether they're over the phone or even in person, is instrumental. You can change a conversation just based on the way that you respond to the client, not acting like you're the one being interviewed completely, but interviewing them back as well. Now, be prepared to deal with objections. You want to really up your game with converting clients. Know the possible objections ahead of time and have examples of how you would respond to that. And you can even preempt their possible objections if they've given you a clue. If they said, oh, your price is a little bit out of our budget, and they give you that clue before you even have a phone call, you can use that information and turn it around on the phone call. You might not even ask them about it. You might bring it up first and say, I understand that I am a premium provider, and so I have rates higher than the industry average. That's because the quality of my work is above the industry average. You can just address it like that and then move on to the next point and leverage all the experience. I don't care if it's volunteer. I don't care if it's something you did in school. If you have a potential way to relate to the client and draw a connection between them and you will form a relationship and they're much more open to hiring you or at least talking to you. So all of your past work, any transferable skills you have that are relevant, if you edited your college newspaper and you're in an editing gig, you can talk about what it was like to work on a publication that was going to print every single sure of that, and how you met deadlines. Every skill set that you have can be translated over to something that addresses the client's needs. And of course, when you're already addressing these objections and concerns on the phone call, you're leading with value. So they're already getting to see what it's like to work with someone like you. They're getting to see that you're professional, that you're talented, that you know what you're talking about, that you care about their concerns. So they start to imagine phone call is going this well, or if this pitch is written this well, I cannot even imagine what it would be like to work with them. Now, my previous online business manager was excellent with this. So she pitched me on Upwork and went ahead and looked at my websites. So she went and looked at my websites and said, based on my review of your websites, here are a couple of things I'd recommend changing. She wasn't being paid by me yet. I didn't even know if I was going to hire her yet. And my current online business, as soon as we had a conversation, she already had a list of things that she'd come up with and said, yeah, I noticed this, this, and this. This would be on our priority list if you chose to work with me. So I was sold, right? Sold on that initial conversation because this is somebody who took 5-10 minutes of their time, but they went in and found pain points that I knew about or maybe didn't know about or realize, but they directly connected what they could do to fixing a problem that I had. That works really well to convert clients is introducing a sense of urgency. Now, sometimes this urgency is real and sometimes it's not. Sometimes you may only have one spot left on your client roster and you mean it when you say, I can only work with one more person. I just wanted to circle back on this proposal and see if we're good to get started in July because, it's mid-June now and I'm closing up this last spot open on my client roster. Or you can, when you send them a proposal, you can say this proposal 48 hours or a week or 1 month, and that may help them make that decision. You can also say my rates are going up next month. If you choose to work with me now, you can lock in the rates at this lower amount. It'll be better for you. And then a really important strategy that so many people overlook is in making the ask and doing it in a really confident way. Now, on a sales call or on a call with a prospective client, you might not feel 100% comfortable saying, well, are you ready to hire me? You probably proposal, but you can ask questions to see where they're at psychologically, like, well, how is this all sounding to you? Does this sound like the type of thing that that could really help you, that's going to help your business go to the next level or get some things off your plate? Ask them directly, and that will give you a clue too as far as how much time to spend on the proposal. Like if the client's like, oh, I don't know, this seems like too much, I'm really busy, I got too much going on, you can still create a proposal, but you're not going to as the person who's on the other end of the line saying, wow, this sounds really great. Can you write up a custom proposal for me? Because they're open to it. So asking these questions, even if it's not a direct, hey, do you want to hire me for the service we've been talking about, gives you a clue of if you're on the right track. And if they're kind of in the middle of those two people where they're like, they seem a little bit uncertain or unsure, well, yeah, I guess I could see how this could help us, or I guess I understand what you're saying. You need to dig a little bit more to answer more of their questions, and you also need to dig yourself. Keep learning more about them. A great way to do this is, what would you like to have happen next? They may say, I need to see a proposal. They may say, I'm ready to hire you. What would this look like? In that case, you're still probably going to say, I need to write up a quick proposal. Can I get that to you this afternoon or tomorrow? Because I think it's really beneficial, unless the client is like urgent to make this call, to instead try to get your thoughts together, digest everything that happened in the phone call, review your notes, and come up with a proposal. I've just found that my proposals are much better when I take a little bit of a break and have some time to think about it and allow other ideas to come in. But if you ask, what would you like to have happen next? And they're like, well, we'll see. We'll call you if we're interested. Okay, you don't need to put any more of your energy into that. They've already told you that they feel the ball is in their court. They're saying, well, I'm really interested in hiring you, but I need to see some references. Do you have 2 people I could talk to? Then you know what you need to do next to keep the conversation going. And sometimes you may have already stipulated all of the aspects of the contract. This might be an Upwork person who just wanted a phone call to get to know you better. It could be someone who's already seen a proposal. You can ask the direct question, are you ready to move forward? And puts the ball back in their court. Do they have any further questions? Are there any other objections that have come up that you as the freelancer can still address? Because it's really on you to address those. If you can, always offer social proof. Nothing converts clients better than the words of other clients, as well as having great work samples and a great pitch. And if you're thinking, well, I'm new, I don't have anything yet, maybe you go out and you offer, to do 3 a slightly reduced rate for other people for the purpose of getting great testimonials that you can put on your website or your LinkedIn profile. One of the things I've done too is I had my VAs go through my Upwork profile and pull out the absolute best feedback I've ever gotten from Upwork clients, and we put it into a PDF. So whether I'm pitching on Upwork or not, I can say, well, take a look at this PDF. This is from actual clients I've worked with. I also ask my clients, when I'm not in a ghostwriting position, under a non-disclosure agreement, to go and leave me feedback on my LinkedIn profile. It's just one more place to offer social proof. And across every platform where you have a professional presence, you need to make sure that it's consistent. So you need to make sure that your website, your LinkedIn profile, your Upwork profile, your Facebook page, if you have that, they all mesh together and present the same image, whatever your brand is. So my clients who find me on LinkedIn are going to format as far as what I'm highlighting on my Upwork profile as well. Now, one of the reasons that I love telling this to people who are trying to leverage Upwork, or maybe have some past feedback on Upwork, but now they're trying to branch off of that platform. Just because someone finds you on that site doesn't mean they're going to hire you there. I cannot tell you how many people contact me in other ways, sending me emails through my website. Oh, I saw your Upwork profile and I'm in you. So they're probably going to Google your name. They're going to look for you other places. And perhaps you want that. Like maybe you don't have enough of an Upwork profile, but maybe you have a little bit and it piques their interest, and they go digging and then they find these other great things. And hopefully you've implemented your LinkedIn strategies properly so that they find you and request more information. Great way to see how is this working for you. Google yourself. What do you find? You should be in control of the information that's out there about you, and you of spots in Google to be relevant and present a consistent thing. If it's something that's unprofessional that comes up, or maybe you did a YouTube video series a couple years ago about your favorite video game ever, and that's what shows up when people Google you for your professional freelance services, maybe you want to do some work to tweak that LinkedIn profile, get a website up there, enhance your Upwork profile, make sure that those are at least coming up first. And of course, as always, make sure that your personal stuff stays personal. So if you do get a no from a client, and occasionally you will, everybody is going to hear the word no at some point in time in their freelance business, just respond professionally. It can be aggravating if you put in a lot of time with a prospective client, or if you thought this was an obvious win, but respond professionally, because you never know where it will go. I have had clients hire me where the person who referred me to them, I never even worked with. Like, I had a client 6 months ago who came to me and I'm like, who referred you to me? Like, I don't recognize your name. And they're like, oh, this guy. And I'm thinking, well, like, I only had a phone call with him. That didn't go anywhere. He never hired me. So you never know where a relationship is going to go. And they may come back later and choose to hire you. So unless the person was a complete jerk and you never want to work with them, always keep it professional. Always let them know that you'll be around. If they change questions, they can still reach out to you. And no definitely doesn't mean never. Sometimes people just need time to think about it. They need time to pull together their budget. They need time to convince somebody else on the team that you are worth the money you're asking for, etc. And if you propose something huge, like let's say you came back with a $5,000 proposal and they just got sticker shock and said, no, I'm not paying that. No to the bigger job doesn't mean that they're going to say no to the smaller job. Sometimes you need to get your foot in the project or trial job. And you can actually increase your chances of converting them to the bigger job by doing an amazing job on the smaller gig as well. So common mistakes with conversions. Don't give up too soon. If you had one bad phone call, one job you thought for sure was yours on Upwork and it didn't pan out, don't give up. And likewise, you want to build up your tolerance to hearing the word no, because you're going to hear it a lot. The guy in my network that I have been pitching for an opportunity over the last 6 months, I have pitched him 7 times, okay? And I told him the second time he turned me down, I'm really persistent. I'm going to keep coming at you until I get a yes. So I prepped him for what was about to happen. But he's told me no 7 times. And it's only made me more resilient because I've heard no before in my freelance business, and I've used it to tweak and grow and adjust. So I'm not scared of it, right? We'll hear firsthand what the pain points are. So this is never a lost cause. If you get on the phone with clients and you're hearing the same thing, I learned this early on. My clients kept saying, people have turned in plagiarized work. We're tired of dealing with duplicate content. It's poorly written. It sucks. I realized that this was a common theme. This was something I could work into every pitch that I sent. So you can always incorporate this into your future pitches, your website copy, etc. This is always valuable intelligence collecting. And if you bomb it and they had an objection, you can always come back after the fact and prepare to be more effective in the future. All right, you're also going to get to practice and tweak your pitch to enhance it and make sure it's as effective as possible. A big mistake that a lot of freelancers make is closing too soon. People do this a lot on LinkedIn. They'll add a prospective client on LinkedIn, and the prospective client accepts the invitation, and then the freelancer immediately, let me tell you all about my services. Or maybe you got on a phone call to see if you're the right fit with a prospective client, and then 5 minutes in, you're telling them how they can sign the contract. You've got to have time for this emotional connection, the psychological dig into what it is they're looking for, and it's your opportunity to come back and show that you're the right person for the job. And don't wait too long to close either. You don't want to keep your client on the phone for 45 minutes if the conversation's not going anywhere. If asked all their questions and you've asked all your questions, you want to look for that natural point in the conversation to say, what do you see the next step being? Or have I addressed all your concerns? Would you like me to create a proposal for you? And if another mistake that you can make is in trying to provide way too much. So if you make the solution seem too overwhelming or too difficult, let's say someone wants to hire you for Facebook ads and you go into all of the things that you need end of that equation, and the client doesn't know the words that you're using, they're extremely confused and they're frustrated. And you're like, well, first we're going to have to install a pixel on your website. And then from there, we're going to have to get everything approved and make sure that the language you're using is going to be accepted by Facebook ads. And then we'll run a split A/B test, and then we'll see what's more effective. And 30 days later, we'll circle back. We're going to need a $20 a day budget for that. You're going to overwhelm the client. They don't need to know all of those details. You need to parse it down to as little. Don't go, whoa, I don't know what you're saying and it sounds expensive or difficult. I'm out. Don't go in blind without doing your research. Always, always check out your clients first. This is a great way to convert them. Find out everything you can, especially if it's a big fish. Like if this is a client that's offering a really good contract or opportunity, go check out LinkedIn, Facebook, their website, and Google. Look for common connections that you could use to break the ice with them. I have a client that found me on LinkedIn, and we've been communicating for 6 months now. He's trying to get the project approved by his superiors, and I went to his LinkedIn profile and saw that we had the same master's degree. So I used that as the conversation. And then having done a lot of research on him, I know the type of topics that interest him. So when a really prominent issue in the news came up surrounding something that he talks about and wants to blog about, I said, hey, I came across this of you. So I'm keeping that conversation going by using the intel I gathered in the past. And then, of course, know who your competitors are and what are they doing? What is the competition doing to stay ahead of the curve to convert and close clients? Another big mistake, not following up. You need to follow up with your prospective clients because it can take them a while to come to the decision to hire you. And a lot of freelancers will drop off after 1 or 2 follow-ups. If you're pitching not Upwork, you want to follow up multiple times. I have clients that I had to follow up with beyond 1 year. So I had to check in with them once a month. Hello, how's it going? Are you still thinking about this project? My calendar's getting full for next month. And then finally at the 12-month mark, they hired me on a retainer for a year. So it takes a while to follow up. That's just the way it is sometimes. And that extra effort will be appreciated because they'll see that you are doggedly pursuing them and kind of gently reaching out and saying, I just wanted to see if you are still available, still thinking about this. And of course, you can ask for their permission to circle back. If your phone call ends ambiguously, you can say, hey, I know this isn't something you're ready to move on right now. What about if I circled back in a month to see if it was a better time? And you can share these exact words with them. I understand this is a big decision and that you need time to think about this. When would be a good time to call you again? You're putting the ball in. Well, I really need to sleep on this, and then I need to talk to my partner at the office, and then they'll tell you when it's a good time to call back. And if they don't have time for another phone call, they're super busy, you can also circle back with them over email. It's a little bit easier, but it can still be very effective. So a couple quick tips I have for preparing for these sales calls. So a client who wants to talk to you on the phone. Always know your value proposition. You need to know it to communicate it to the client, but to avoid bad clients. Because if they get on the phone call and they're talking about a value proposition that you don't have, something you don't really feel confident with, this may not be the right fit for you. And that's equally valuable for you to know that. Of course, be prepared for those possible objections. Don't let it hinder you or freak you out that the client's going to have objections. Almost every client is going to have an objection. They could say that you're not experienced enough. They could say they don't know enough about enough of your work samples. They want to talk to people who've worked with you before. You're too expensive. You're too cheap. They're worried you don't have time in your schedule. I mean, there's literally every possible objection out there, and it's all about how you respond to it. Just because a client has an objection doesn't mean they have already decided not to work with you. They are, in a sense, like challenging you and saying, hey, this is an issue I have. Can you convince me I'm wrong? And that's your opportunity to come back and show them that they're wrong. So some common possible objections: money, I'm looking at other people, I'll get back to you when I've interviewed 50 other freelancers, or I don't know if I really need this. Now, every single one of these can be turned around. I don't have the money. That's your opportunity to say, well, maybe this project is a little bit too big for where your budget's at right now. What if I presented you with another option where instead of 4 pieces of landing page copy per month, we did 2? Would that work? Would that be a good way to start? And then once you start scale up to what you originally hoped, that's a good way to respond to, I don't have the money. Now, some clients just literally don't have the money. They want to pay you $5 to create an entire website or something like that. That's okay. They're not your ideal client. Hopefully you weed them out before you do a phone call. But sometimes when someone says, I don't have the money, they're just meaning that they don't have the money today or next week, but they could have it in the future. Or they're saying, pitch me something else I can afford. I'm looking at other. Again, this can go both ways. If they're just looking for the cheapest possible price, they're not your ideal client anyways, but you can talk about yourself in comparison to other people and say, well, that's fine. Definitely go out there and gather all the information you need. I will let you know, though, that I only can hold this quote for 48 hours and that I only have 1 spot left on my client roster. So please let me know as soon as possible. Or you can say, I recently hired a web designer who fixed 2 of my home pages, and she was the most expensive proposal I got. And she's says, I know I'm the most expensive proposal you got, but I can get this done in 7 days and my work is way above average. So you're going to know that it's done right the first time. Sold, done, paid her, over with, project fixed, So you never know until you take these objections and turn it around on the client. I don't know if I really need this. This means you haven't done your job in educating the client about why they need this service or why they need you or why they should outsource it. So dig into that. Ask for more information. Objection. I'm too busy right now. That's all the more reason they need to hire you. They've got a lot going on. Maybe they can hire you this week, but continue to circle back. Great case for the follow-up with these clients who are too busy. I often tell people that I've spoken with that I'm too busy right now because I do have a lot going on and I can't see the time in my schedule today or this week to fit it in, but I will be able to fit it in at some point in the future. So just keep falling back and people will wait for a high quality freelancer. If they don't have the budget now, they'll find a way to make it work. If they're super busy, they'll fit you in the future. Okay, lots of information. I'm going to jump into the questions now. Oh, I'm sorry. It looks like the sound quality is a little bit inconsistent, which is weird. It should be good, but I appreciate you all telling me that the has been an issue. I hope that we can fix that. We'll put in a ticket to Webinar Jam again to say that we've heard this from a couple of people and see if we can't figure out why that's happened. So if you have a question, go ahead and drop it in the chat box. I'm going to answer the questions we've already gotten. So what is a typical format and contents of your proposal to a prospective client? So there is no way to answer this that it will apply to everyone because it's going to depend on the client's pain points, the services I'm offering, but it's just totally. You're always going to want to address why you can do the job. If you're pitching somebody cold, like you're literally emailing someone whose email address you found on a company website, you're going to need to dive into why they need that service to begin with. So you have to do an educational piece, whereas on Upwork, the person already knows they need the service. They already know they need to, sorry, the screen froze for a second. They know that they need to buy it. They just are looking for the right person. So the typical format and contents of your proposal to a prospective client is really going to depend on what they need. And you've got to suss that out. You've got to figure out, okay, does this person already have a good sense of why they need me as a freelancer? Can I be ready to handle their possible objections? If not, if they don't understand why they need this service or why they should outsource it, you're going to have to do an educational piece. So there's just way too much really talk about just pitching alone for 2 hours because it depends so much on the client. But you always want to address any pain points that they've given you, which is more common in like an Upwork situation. Or another way to do it is like if someone contacts you on LinkedIn and they say, we're thinking of hiring, blah, 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 you can see what other information you can find out about them online. If you're a web designer, a writer, social media manager, you can go check out their existing channels and say, oh, I had a chance to look at your website. I noticed that it slowly. We should fix the speed on that. So it really just depends. You've got to, and within a pitch, you have to highlight your own unique value proposition. You need to talk about why they need the service if it's a cold pitch, and then you want to prompt them to take further action. You want to give them some idea of what the next step is, even if it's a phone call. So the next question is, doesn't multiple follow-ups lower your efficiency? Absolutely not, because it does not take any time at all, and it can lead to huge gigs. So the client that I had for a year, I would say in total, I spent less than an hour and a half following up with them because these were not phone calls. These were emails. These were quick touch base conversations that we had over email that led to a $25,000 retainer. So was that 90 minutes of work plus the work I did on the initial proposal worth it? Absolutely, you bet, because it's about recurring revenue. So that's far better spent than 90 minutes bidding on jobs that aren't going anywhere and never convert into. Follow-ups are really important. Like, think about the last time that you paid for something, right? You invested in a book or a course or a coach or, a new pair of tennis shoes. You spent a lot of time doing your research. You followed up multiple times before you made that decision. The statistics change, but I've heard that it takes anywhere from 7 to 10 touch points before a person is comfortable to do business with you. 7 to 10 times. they're most to hire you the first time out of the gate. So these follow-ups are extremely, extremely important if you are pitching on LinkedIn, if you are pitching over email, if you are active in Facebook groups or other networks online or offline. The follow-up is crucial. And when you send a proposal, if you aren't following up, you are leaving thousands and thousands of dollars on the table. So it's well worth the minimal amount of time. So the next question is, do I require clients to sign contracts if standard consulting contract with a reference scope of work? I don't have clients sign contracts if we are working off of Upwork. However, any other project, I strongly recommend getting a client to sign a contract. I use a standard contract and then I will go in and update it with the terms of the actual agreement. So if I'm not doing a writing project, I'm going to take the parts of my contract that say how many rounds of revisions are allowed and that sort of thing out of it. As clear as possible with a client. I have a group of freelancers that I'm coaching who are building their business to and beyond the six-figure level. And one of them actually has this issue right now that she has a contract and some of the terms are a little bit unclear, and that can make things difficult because then what the client tried to do is dump a bunch of stuff on her and say, well, we're going to have you do everything because, the contract says social media marketing. You want to be as clear as possible. And I do love scope of work for a number of reasons. It holds you accountable only to what you said you were going to do. And if the client starts pushing back and saying, well, what about this? Can't you also do this? You can say, well, take a look at our contract. Our actual scope of work was for services A, B, and C. That's what I'm doing. So if you want to change that, I can send you an updated proposal, but this is what we originally agreed to. So I do think it's important to have clients sign contracts, not just for the fact of yourself, but it also is a great chance to get everyone on the same page. Sometimes clients misunderstand things, and this happens more often than you would think. So if a client misunderstands what you meant or made a mistake or something like that, you don't want that to show up later when you're already on the hook to do the work. So the contract is your last chance to get everyone on the same page and say, these are the services that are being paid for. These are the terms of how the payment's going to be made, going to be delivered, what's going to happen if something goes wrong and one of us wants out of this contract. All that information is really valuable to know.